the Hunter Biden laptop story is getting bigger and bigger because suddenly there's a shift. The media isn't all circling the wagons and saying it's not real, it's a conspiracy theory. They can't anymore because the New York Times, Washington Post, the high temples of left-wing journoism, they've decided that this is actually real. Here's just a taste, a smattering, if you will, of corporate Democrat media waking up to the story.
Intensifying investigation. The probe into the tax affairs and financial dealings of the president's son, Hunter Biden, is heating up.
New information this morning about an ongoing investigation into President Biden's son, Hunter.
The federal investigation into Hunter Biden's business practices is broader than previously known.
A grand jury in Wilmington has heard from a parade of witnesses about payments Hunter Biden received while on the board of the Ukrainian gas company, Burisma.
Testifying before a grand jury about the president's son and his business dealings in Ukraine and elsewhere.
Talking about the investigation, the federal investigation into Hunter Biden, which is real.
The walls around Hunter Biden closing in as investigations carry on, and the mainstream media is starting to take notice.
Starting to take notice, Clay. Let's start with this. Why?
Why indeed? Let's start with this, Buck Sexton. Are you nervous? Every day getting a little bit more nervous. I can taste the sizzling Wagyu, maybe even high. What's higher end than Wagyu steak?
I don't think there is anything. When they price it by the ounce, you know your steak is going to be really expensive. That's how they get you, because no one does the math.
We're going to price it by the ounce. That's right, and I'm going to have a lot of ounces. But let me just say, the reason why this story's coming out, Buck, this is where I started reading the tea leaves.
Deferred prosecution doesn't count, Clay, because that's what I think they'll do, meaning they don't actually bring charges. They keep the opening there to do charges at a later date if he messes up again. Just want to be clear on that, because that's how I think they have an out.
As soon as this story came out in the New York Times, I came on and I said, the New York Times is trying to get ahead of this. Because here's what these news organizations that are already embarrassed by the way they've covered this don't want to happen, Buck. They don't want to tell all their audience, there's nothing to the Hunter Biden story, there's nothing to it, and then boom, what if an indictment happens? Then they've got to explain how they claim that there was nothing to any of the Hunter Biden laptop, how it was all fake, how it was all Russian disinformation. And then they suddenly have to drop a bombshell on their audiences, which is embarrassing. But worse than the embarrassment, Buck, it makes them look dumb. And it makes them look out of touch. So what you often see in stories like these is a slow tiptoe up to, oh, by the way, this is kind of a significant story. Oh, let's all find a way to work our way back into covering this. And even at the clips that we just played, it's, oh, yeah, by the way, there's a grand jury investigating this dude. And what you're seeing at the Washington Post, CNN, CBS, NBC, ABC, New York Times, all of these places are suddenly acknowledging, and I'm looking forward to talking with Miranda Devine about this because she was part of the group that broke this story, and she wrote the book Laptop from Hell. I'm interested in what she thinks on this, but it seems quite clear that after 18 months of stonewalling and pretending there was nothing to this, they now are letting their audience know there is something to this and more is going to come of it. And I think it also ties in with Joe Biden's 40% approval rating. I'm not sure, Buck, they'd be covering it aggressively if his approval rating was 65%.
So here's what I'm trying to line up as we do our analysis of this, Clay, because something has changed. Nothing changed in terms of events.
That's
News
right.
stories came out that have essentially said, yeah, and now I do think that it's the federal investigation of Hunter Biden that is still ongoing and is looking like it is serious. When you accept millions, I just want to establish this for everybody, because it was the same, because I'm worried we're going to have, what is it, Yogi Berra deja vu all over again?
Yes.
I'm worried that's what we're heading for. That's a sports guy, right?
Yeah.
Look what
Great
I did
catcher
there.
for the New York
Thank
Yankees
you.
back in the day.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I'm worried that it's going to be like the Hillary situation. I had a TS, top secret clearance. I had to go through all the training and all the stuff about being a classified information handler. What Hillary Clinton did fell clearly under the statute for mishandling classified information with recklessness, because it was over 100 times she had sent on an open server classified information. They just pretended like the statute didn't really matter, and that was because Hillary was so important to them. What I'm trying to see here is, or what I want everyone to understand here is that Hunter Biden accepting money and not declaring it, millions of dollars and not declaring it, is bright red letter, you go to jail, right? This is you have violated the law stuff. So they're going to have to find some way around it. And I'm trying to think of what it is. With Hillary, they basically said there was no criminal state of mind, there was no mens rea, and Comey basically made it up as he went along. Clay, how do you think, assuming that I'm right, and the millions of dollars now, and I know you think that prosecutors are actually going to bring charges. Of course, we have our bet. We'll keep talking about that. But is there a legal way they could get how do you get millions of dollars from a corrupt Chinese company that's trying to buy you off and buy access, not declare it, and not face criminal charges from the IRS? You know what I mean? What is the possible explanation?
Well, first of all, remember, they got Al Capone for tax evasion.
Yes.
Which is a great line. But for people out there who remember, Al Capone was into all sorts of shady gangland activities. They managed to catch him through tax evasion. So they have Hunter Biden dead to rights on tax evasion. Dead to rights. And the fact that he has repaid, allegedly, $1 million in back taxes that he owed doesn't mean that he did not violate the law. Here's what I think they're going to do, Buck. I think what we're already starting to see. They are going to ISO Hunter Biden off and argue that he's not an American politician, not an employee, not involved in government at all, and they're going to take out Hunter in some way. I don't think he's going to go to jail for 50 years or anything like that.
No, by the way, and he wouldn't for tax yes. evasion is usually
but I
a
do
few
think
years.
There's other elements there. I think what they will do is they will argue, well, Hunter, while he was under the influence of drugs and alcohol, was not taking great control of his finances.
That's right.
Money was rolling
in. It was an accident.
In. He was a mess. He inadvertently failed to pay his taxes. There is no, and what they will, there will be some, I do think that there will be some minor charges, right, that he will plead guilty to. I think they'll indict him, and I think they'll ultimately end up agreeing to some sort of minor charges. I do believe he'll be indicted. But what they're going to try to do, Buck, is wall off Joe Biden. And so that's what I think the media is already starting to do. They are Hunter Biden, right? Maybe even Jim Biden, his brother, but they're going to try to avoid there's no connection to Joe Biden impropriety. I think that's what they're going to do.
The thing they're really worried about, and we'll save this because I want to get to this with Miranda Devine of the New York Post in the next hour. We come back to this. But the 10% for the big guy,
you're right.
That's not you. That's not me. We know who the big guy is, so we should come back to that because that's what you're right that they'll wall that off. But, Clay, this is the president's son.
I agree.
So I'm just going to say, I mean, my contention here is that he broke the law and that they'll do something. But if he does not face prison time for what he did, he is getting special treatment as the president's son. No, like if he doesn't face real criminal charges and plead to a felony of some kind, right? I mean, a misdemeanor or something is a joke. Yeah. That means that he's getting special treatment. If he did face a real federal criminal charge, let's say, and had to plead guilty, Joe Biden pardons him. And I'm wondering, we're playing this out now. Joe Biden pardons him because he's a father, and this is his son, and he's the president. And
he's probably not going to run for re-election. That would be a sign. He's not going to pardon him. Well, see, here's what
he pardons him. He's politically wounded, no question about it, because now all the stuff about but Biden will bring back normalcy and it won't be corrupt. The media will try, but it will be pathetic. And remember, we're trying to get sane people, independents, persuadables to vote Republican. We're never going to. There's 20 or 30% of the country that they are still triple masking outside alone. We're never going to reach them. But is there a possibility in your mind that he lets Hunter do 6 months and then actually get sympathy as the president who is so letter of the law that he would let his own son go to a halfway house or something for, six. Remember, Wesley Snipes, I think, didn't pay $40 million. He had $40 million he didn't pay money on. And I was a Wesley Snipes fan back in the 90s. He was great movies. Major League. I thought Blade was very underrated.
Blade was really good.
I think he got 3 years in federal prison or 4 years in federal prison, something like that. Hunter would probably be facing 6 months. Do you think there's a possibility he would let him serve? His time.
The way it would play out, I think it's unlikely to be resolved before Joe Biden's term as president was basically over. In other words, if they bring charges against him, it's going to get dragged out, right? One of the top strategies would immediately be of a defense attorney. Let's drag this on as long as we possibly can, probably. And especially if you knew that the president was your dad and he was going to be stepping down in January of 2025, I guess, right? This is presuming that Biden is not going to run for re-election in 2024 and that he would be able to offer some form of leniency, that he would give him a pardon. But here's the deal. What becomes even more fascinating about the pardon idea is if they don't wall off Joe Biden, then you can make the strong argument that the reason he's pardoning his son is to avoid criminal charges potentially himself. And then he's trying to pardon himself, which becomes this really kind of fascinating Rubik's Cube of legal analysis.
And we would be full circle, and everybody should remember this, to where the Democrats were under Trump. They accused Trump of what their candidate and now the Democrat president has actually done or is in the midst of right now, I should say. The Biden family really is corrupt. Hunter Biden really is corrupt.
Yes.
And there does seem to be an influence peddling scheme meant to not just enrich the Biden family in general, but perhaps even the 10% for the big guy, Joe Biden himself. They're going to fight tooth and nail, by the way, in the media to prevent people from coming to that conclusion, no matter what the evidence is.